country's tradition.
Many museums charge admission fees while others are free. Do the advantage of charging people to visit museum or to the disadvantage? So let's
Traditionally,
get
the
started.
government paid or the government funded them, and so they were free. So that's why now there's sort of a mixture. It's changed. The government isn't funding as much, or in some cases, it isn't funding museums. So it has changed. And if we think about what museums are for, they are for entertainment, but also for education. And it's quite important, the type of things that you learn in a museum, because it could be to do with the history of the world. It could be to do with the history of a culture or civilization. It could even be to do with science, technology, the planets, the earth. So very important sort of topics that we need to perhaps keep that knowledge alive. So with that in mind, thinking about museums, let's think about the advantages and just think about your country. Do you know if they are free? So how is this in your country? Do they charge fees? I know in Melbourne, Australia, where I am, there is a charge. I think it's $15. However, they do have discounts for children or children under 16 and for pensioners, so they are free. They charge, said Deepak. Okay, advantages, someone's already onto it. Not free in Nigeria. Yeah, I know in parts of Europe they're not free. In France, in Paris, they're not free. They charge in Japan. Okay, charge in India. Yeah, so it seems very common. I think in Australia we have a few different museums, as you would. We have many different museums. One is called the Migration Museum, which is the history of migration to Australia. And some parts of that are free. And then they'll have special exhibitions, which you have to pay for. So that can also be the case where it's partly free. Yeah, there we go. Christoph said permanent collections are often free while themed exhibitions charge. Very well said. In the UAE, they charge but a low fee. Okay, that's good. That sounds like a clever idea. In England, some are free and some are paid. Yeah, that's what I thought in England. And Zara, government museums have a charges but at low prices. Private do charge, exactly. So maybe smaller ones, like in Australia we have sports museum, we have the police museum, we have, a range, and some of them, the smaller ones, the private ones charge to stay alive because they don't get funding. Free for babies, said Dorothea. Yeah, that's good news for babies. Okay, and Ong said there is a charge, it's not expensive. Yeah. And okay, Seema said most museums are free in London. Sudan, for schools, free. Well, that's a good idea, Nehal, isn't it? So to have that, okay, Asim said most of the museums are owned by the government. So we've got a range there. And let's think about what are some of the benefits of charging people to visit museums. So what do museums do in that? What are the different costs involved in running a museum? What do you think would be involved in running a museum? If you think about a big organisation for the public, what could be involved? Saba said, never been to a museum. Interesting. So often we don't go to museums. It's not something we do as much these days. Insurance, good idea, Christoph, is a big cost. I can imagine they've got to insure all the special items. Security charge, yeah, so they would need tight security, especially on valuable exhibitions. That's right, salaries for staff, maintenance, power, rent, possibly, just very basic costs. Hygiene, yeah, these days especially. Maintenance, staff salaries, generate their own revenue for maintenance. Yeah, research, that's right. They've got to also store a lot of things. Think how big some of the exhibitions are. They've got to have storage room. Lighting, repairs, maintenance. Very good, Deepak. Yeah, and they can't necessarily, Karutaland has said, can't rely on government funding, which can be deployed elsewhere. So there's that, if they rely on it and it's taken away, it could be risky. Design, definitely, Dorothea. So they would have curators, people that design the displays. Be a lot of research, a lot of documentation. And also acquiring new exhibitions, new artefacts from overseas would be very expensive, I imagine. Cleanliness, yep, very, very true. Also, marketing, normal costs in running a big business. Yeah, curators, conducting scientific research. Yeah, continuous improvement, that's right. They might need to expand, repair, yeah, have just the basic premises. And good. Okay, so let's have a look. What have we got here? JD has said better advantages, better service, maintenance charge, security charge. Yeah. Okay, and then we've got the negatives as well. So we've talked about possibly government funding them to some extent. What other sources of funding do museums have? So if they have a charge, they'll get the charge, the funding for the fee. They'll get some government money. Any other sources? Two or three would be fine, Deval. Probably two is better. Yeah. So government funding, donations, definitely. That's they encourage donations. Sponsorship. There we go, Christoph. You know a lot about it. So it's yeah, they might have companies that actually help them, like car companies, big companies that will help them. Perhaps they'll get something in return, like some advertising of their products. Yeah, that's right. Zara said some cafes have cafes inside, so they might have shops and cafes as well to generate revenue. Yeah, Christoph, foundations like Cartier Foundation, excellent. Yep, souvenir shops, well said. Endorsements, great. That's right. Entrance fees. Yeah, definitely the entrance fees. So that's what it's all about. So what might happen if museums did not charge entrance fees? So if they didn't charge at all, and if there was a crisis where the government funding was cut, the funding could be slashed. Excellent, Dorothea. So if there is a slashed funding, so it means suddenly cut, the funding is suddenly cut, they would be in dire straits. Yeah, they can't buy new artifacts. They can't organise things. They can't, difficult to manage the standards, that's right. So things like staff, all those operational costs. It will be very crowded, says Afia. That's right. Good point. So, yeah, it will be flooded with people coming into the museum. So, maintenance difficult, that's right. And even maybe people may not appreciate if it's free. Some people may not appreciate it as much, the quality of the experience. Yeah, loss of jobs, that's right. So it could lead to actually closure. And what will happen if we don't have museums? If all museums disappeared, what's wrong with that? What could be lost, would you say? Yeah, that's right. So, and the further research and development may be halted. Yeah, history could be sort of lost, or certainly that exposure, that face-to-face interaction that we can have, that real-life interaction. Yeah, knowledge could be lost of history, lost physically. Yeah, so these artifacts could just kind of deteriorate, be neglected. No historical education. Yeah, learning for the new generation. So they do certainly have a important place in our society. So if we think about that, what are some of the drawbacks of charging an entrance fee? So we've talked about the advantages. What are the disadvantages that could occur if they put a fee when before it was free? Yeah, less demand, that's right. Not everyone can afford, that's it. So it could be exclude some sections of society who would go, that's right. And as someone said, in their country, it's free for school children. So if school children had to pay, perhaps it wouldn't be part of the school curriculum anymore. And it actually might be a very, very valuable, very sort of effective educational tool for children to visit a museum. Yeah, it could lead to closure, that's right. So definitely some people will be left out, could lead to closure, and could lead to that loss of information. Yeah, lack of interest in visiting, possibly, yes. Okay, yeah, very good. And yeah, fewer tourist attractions. So if there is no charge, then that could lead on to a lower quality in the museums and then attract less people. So we can think of the repercussions of not having enough funding or not having ample funding. So definitely it would be, detrimental. Okay. Okay, so Kelly doesn't understand the question. So the question is, should they charge admission fees? What are the advantages of charging a fee? So let's have a look at, we've talked about the broader problems. So broader problems are closure, loss of knowledge, and also, just not maintaining the actual pieces of artefacts, the actual items themselves. So our topic is about museums charging fees, and some are free. So is it better? Do the advantages of charging fees to people to visit outweigh the disadvantages? So in other words, are there more advantages than disadvantages? So that's what you've got to address. Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. So you might be able to refer to something in your own life, your own hometown, or just something you've read or seen, heard about in another country or in the news. You can even use hypothetical situations. Okay, so how can it lead to closure? So the closures are, it could lead to closure if there's no funding from the government. So in some countries, like in Australia, there is an entrance fee. There might be a little bit of funding, but it's not enough to keep it going. So that topic is about museums and sort of maybe the importance of them in our world. And then the prompt is about, is it a good idea to charge? And then we need to introduce our position. So what we're going to discuss in our position. And we need to talk about advantages and disadvantages. So we should include at least two because of the S. So not just one disadvantage, one advantage. So this is the structure we can use to do that. Umbrella statement, point 1, extend, point 2, extend, and then the same here. So we can have would affect museum, so the sort of quality are valid, but museums do keep prices low. So I sort of qualify this by saying, most museums don't charge that much that it's going to put people off altogether. All right, so that's a good way to get your plan going. Try and extend it and think of your clear different points. Okay, so Afia, should we write in the form of a listing or paragraph? For the planning stage, Afia, I would just put a list. And notice how I've used symbols, I've used abbreviations, that sort of thing. It's just notes, I guess, notes to work on. It's like when you're making a building, you have to have a structure. So it's the structure. It's not all the bricks and the wood and everything we need to fill in. So let's have a look at my opinion. So more advantages. That's my opinion. Okay, so let's write our essay and keeping this in mind. So we need to answer all parts of the question. We need to address the advantages and the disadvantages. We need to make it clear if we think there are more advantages or disadvantages because the instructions asked us to. And we need to explain what we mean. We can't just say funding will be good for the museum. How? What will it be used for? What will that result in? So extend and support your ideas. And then we need to also try and use some natural word combinations, some academic formal expressions and different vocabulary, and check our spelling. And also we want to be using linking words, using different referencing words, and grammatical range, so some complex sentences, probably 4 to 5 in our essay, and also checking our grammar for little grammar areas, very important, and punctuation. So lots to keep in mind, lots to keep working on. Okay, now Sador said, is it bad if I plan in my mind? I have to say, Sador, as a teacher, it makes me scared when people say, I just plan it in my mind. Because why? Yeah, and it catches more and why. That's all. So definitely have to. Okay, tips to give us to expand our ideas. Okay, so let's look at our tips. To spending time in the planning, about 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes is plenty. Yep. Okay, so right with the criteria in mind. Introduction now. So we will go into those steps of writing, how to generate your ideas in a moment, Hina. So let's have a look at my introduction. So a visit to a museum is undoubtedly one of the most interesting ways to delve into and discover history. So lovely opening sentence. I'm saying why they are important, and it catches the reader's attention. So I've drawn them into my essay. Although charging an admission fee to enter a museum is common, it's not always popular. So that's sort of a comment about this situation. So as long as you're saying some museums do charge an entrance fee, so we need to target the actual question. And in this essay, I will discuss the advantages and the potential drawbacks of charging such a fee and explain why I feel that it is necessary. So I feel it's important. I feel it outweighs the disadvantages. So you try now, write your third sentence of the introduction expressing your view. So saying how this essay will present in the paragraph. Now, here is my first advantage. As the main aim of a museum is to promote the enjoyment and sharing of cultural heritage, artefacts must be maintained carefully so they are unaffected by conditions which may impact their value, such as light, dust, and accidental damage. Now, I love this sentence. I really do. It's the best sentence in the essay, I think. The reason I think that is because it explains why. It doesn't just say artefacts need to be maintained carefully. It tells me why at the beginning. It says because museums are there to promote the enjoyment and sharing of this sort of information. Therefore, they must be maintained. So it really gives you that convincing argument why it's important. So that's a good technique. Explain why something is an advantage or why it is important. And not only that, but I've also included what I mean by maintained. So you don't have to put it all in one sentence, but I've managed to in this case. I've said conditions which impact their value, such as light, dust, and accidental damage. So that's what I mean by maintain carefully. And also I've said that equipment and the hiring of professionals to care for and protect these valuable items would not always be possible without money from the public. So I've said, it is about looking after them because they're important, but it's also about staff as well. And then I've said my second advantage is that many museums do not have stable financial support. For example, those in the UK, for instance, had their funding slashed recently as a result of government policy changes. Clearly, without admission fees, many institutions would not be able to survive. So if fees were removed, they'd be reliant on the funding. It could disappear if the government changed, policies changed in the government. So that's a very nice paragraph there. And let's look at that in terms of task response. So why would this writing score well in task response? Relevant, fully be, they could get into poor condition. They could be damaged if they're not cared for. So that's what could happen. What's a good example? So I've given the one in the UK. They can become fluent more quickly. If they spend most of their time at home, they can write different sentence structures. So it is possible. It is possible. So maybe try it today, and here is my first disadvantage. From the visitor's perspective, this charge may deter them from visiting in the first place. And now my example of this, if the fee, and this is not even a real example, this is a hypothetical example. So it's a good one to use if you don't have that experience with an example. You could see if you can come up with an idea, hypothetical. If the fee were $20, families, low-income earners, and students may not be able to afford it. So second conditional. In terms of the museum itself, this drop in visitor numbers could affect their ability to employ staff, host exhibitions, and in some cases may even result in closure. So that's my second reason, is that it could really affect the operational costs and operational sort of aspects. So while such concerns are valid, most museums do keep their prices low or offer discounts to prevent these scenarios. So it's just sort of a concluding sentence about the current situation. All right, so that's my body two. So making sure nice, clear topic sentence, you've got your points, you've extended them, given at least one example in your paragraph. Anna has a question. So can we make up examples? Yes, you can. Yeah, that's right. So no, this is a very officially approved thing that you can invent examples. I think the only time it might be a problem is if you're quoting someone, this person said this or did this and they didn't, then I think then that's a problem. But if it's a fictional research or fictional museum, that's fine, absolutely fine. Because after all, it's not based on research, this essay. It's based on, can you develop your ideas and support them? So it's different from perhaps a PhD. You have to get real evidence. Okay, so write your body two after class and try and stick to the timing. And let's go to the conclusion. So here is my conclusion. And I want you to read through and add in the missing words. So fill in the referencing words, so cohesive devices in my conclusion. So these are words like pronouns, like object, subject pronouns, he, she, maybe them, it. It could be a reference word like such, that, this, those. So all those sort of words that we use to make it nice and smooth. All right, so I'll give you 45 seconds to try that now, read through and fill in the missing reference words. Do your best.
So in conclusion, museum play an important role in many communities, in other communities, yes, which is why it is necessary to consider ways to keep that operating. While admission fees may deter some visitors, the benefits of such a cost provided them
Okay, not so easy, maybe. I thought it's quite difficult. Good work, Savannah. Good work, Deepak. Oh, actually, you have been very accurate, what I can see so far. So let's check it out. So in conclusion, museums play an important role in our communities, which is why it is necessary to consider ways to keep them operating. While admission fees may deter some visitors, the benefits of such a cost, provided it is reasonable, far outweigh this concern. If you had a different word, but it still makes sense, don't worry, that's fine. It's just practicing using those. That for 4, okay, let's have a look. Provided that, you still need it, because you're talking about the cost. So you could say provided that it is, but you still need the it, yeah. Provided that it is, that's right. Okay, good job, good job. So, good, Dorothea, well done. So here we have our sort of, again, reflecting on the importance of museums and why, therefore it is important to keep them operating, because we were supporting the side of charging a fee. And yes, there are some disadvantages, and we've summarised what those, but we've said that, made it clear that definitely the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So look at how we use this verb outweigh. So not outweight. Often people put a T at the end. No, it's a verb, is outweigh. Outweight doesn't exist as a word. Weight does by itself. Okay. To outweigh advantages, we have to use may, might. Okay. So it's more far away. May, because it's asking your opinion, you don't have to say may or might. You could say they definitely outweigh the disadvantages. So you can be quite direct because it's your opinion. Yes, I can show the full essay. No worries. Okay, so hope you went well, and yeah, please review last Tuesday's class for more information about coherence and cohesion. So just a little bit of self-correction, then we'll look at the finished essay. So some of the things that we often see, common problem areas, to do with these. And let's try 2 of these now and see if we can find those common areas. Never give a low scoring one as a model essay. It's always 8 or 9, depends on the examiner. So there's nothing wrong with this essay. It follows all the criteria, meets all the criteria. There's no mistakes, so it's going to get at least an 8 or a 9. So we always do that in this class. Okay.